guys, and welcome back. Today, let's talk about one of my favorite things in the world, and that is brushes, specifically watercolor brushes. I don't think I've ever really gone into depth as far as what are my favorite brushes, why do I use them. So that's what we're gonna do today. I have this is basically what I would start over with if I were going to give myself a kit of watercolor brushes. This would get the job done. This is exactly what I use almost every single time. I love these brushes, so I will have each one of these listed down in the description if you're interested in exactly what I would start off with. But yeah, let's start off with talking about what I would have in my starter kit, but also a little bit more about each type of brush and why I use it and what I use it for. So let's get started. So all of these brushes are actually Taklon brushes. I absolutely love these brushes. I've been using them for years and I've been buying them for years. Last year I got on the pro team with them, which was amazing. I love working with them. So I highly recommend this brand. I love them. But as far as the brushes themselves, I would divide them up into four categories. I have Protege brushes, and that's the type of bristle. Onyx, which is also the type of bristle, and liner brushes and tiny brushes. So the Protege brushes, this is the first one that I'm going to be talking about. These have a lot of snap to them. They're really sharp and precise on the points, but they also hold a lot of water, which is why I love these for general use with my watercolors. I use these mostly for laying that first wash and establishing where the colors are. I love it because it allows me to get a lot of color down in large areas, but also get in all the little nooks and crannies with a really sharp point that stays sharp. I love that. So for this category, I would say I would start off with a size 3 round and a size 6 round. Those are kind of nice, medium, smallish brushes. And I'd also get a 1-inch wash of the Protege. This would allow me to get really quick, even washes for things like backgrounds or really large areas. I would definitely say that Proteges are my favorites. They're the ones that I have the most sizes of, since they're the most universally usable for watercolors, for me at least. They pretty much can do any job. They're great for that. So I would stock up the most on sizes of those if you're interested in that. I also really love flat brushes for creating flat washes, so I have a lot of those as well. But the rounds, you just can't really go wrong with them. They're like the primary watercolor brush. But moving on to the second type of brush, that's the Onyx brushes. And these are really, really soft. That's why I love them for a lot of specific applications. So where the Protege has a lot of spring and sharpness to them, these feel very moppy and, again, soft. And what they're perfect for is creating glazes on top of watercolor that's already on the paper. A lot of watercolors will reactivate when you put water back on top of it. It depends on the pigment, but it's something that you have to be a little bit more careful with. You don't want to scrub at it unless there's a specific effect you're looking for. But in general, if you want to layer clean washes on top of each other, you have to have a little bit more of a delicate hand for each subsequent wash. And that's why I love the Onyx brushes. This allows me to do another wash on top, but it's so soft and feather light on top of it that it doesn't disturb the paint underneath. It's a lot easier to get, again, these really clean washes that don't muddy what's already there. So these I really love for building up the glazes, especially in faces, so that I can get really soft blends. They also are my favorites for adding in colors while I'm doing wet on wet washes. Because they're so soft, they don't have really defined edges as much as like a Protege or golden Taklon. I use those a lot too, but it doesn't create like very specific circles or dots in the wet paper that I'm painting on. It actually allows the paint to spread out in a more soft, diffused way. So these are really the ones I've been picking up a lot more for when I'm doing, again, wet on wet. The next brush type are liners. These help me paint my favorite step, which is actually adding all of the line work to my paintings. If you don't know, I do use acrylic gouache for the line work on my watercolors. I love that method. These brushes work great for that. I actually use golden Taklon. That's a type of brush, and these are liners or script brushes, and they're great. These ones, they just keep the point really well. Because they're long, they hold a lot of paint. That way I can get a really continuous, smooth line or brush stroke with it. So these are great for, again, line work, but also any long, smooth details that I want to add with my watercolors. But mostly I do use them for my line work specifically. One of my favorite things that I learned about using these to get a really smooth line is actually to roll the brush in the paint while you're filling it and loading it up with the paint. This allows it to bring all of the bristles together, and it creates a sharp point, and it creates really smooth lines while I'm painting. It helps bring it all together. So that actually was a habit that I've learned that just makes everything so much smoother and easier. And the last type of brush, which isn't really a type of brush, it's just how I categorize it, but it's my tiny, tiny brushes. I love these. I said that the last brush was for my favorite step, but I would say that these are also one of my favorite steps, and that's adding in all of the tiny details. So things like highlights in the eyes, or any little effects like texture that I want to create, or line work for very small areas. So like line work in eyes or on faces, I'll very often pick one of my tiny brushes instead of one of my liner brushes because they're a lot shorter. It allows me to have a lot of control over that, so I can really choke up on it and make sure that it's as precise as I want it to be. So these are my favorites. I pretty much always have a few spare on hand that are new because the smaller the brush, the quicker they will deteriorate. So I just have a few so that I can always have a sharp one if I need it. But my favorite sizes are 20/0 and 1. I always have those on hand so that I can create these really tiny, delicate details. And these are actually golden Taklon. That's the type of bristle. That tends to be my favorite for the really tiny, tiny brushes. I think that they're some of the most robust brushes. It keeps the point the longest, and these are just some of my favorites. When I get to pull these out and start using them, it means that I'm at the finish line. I get to add all of those little special details to the painting. So I love pulling these out. So thank you guys so much for watching, hanging out with me while I talk about one of my favorite things, watercolor brushes. And of course, thank you to Pocatello. They did sponsor this video, but I highly, highly stand behind these brushes. I've seriously been using them for so many years. You can see these in my videos for years and years. So I recommend these. But again, I have that list down in the description. So if you wanted to see each brush and brush size listed, check that out. I also have a link to Pocatello if you'd like to get any of these brushes. And that's it for today. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.